Hi, this is Jace Gordon to allow you here with a book review. Today's book I'll be talking about today, Breakdown by William W. Johnstone. Neat cover. This is from Pinnacle, and this was published in March 1997. This was a decent read. This is basically about a civil war that breaks out in the United States. You got these militia group members who are trying to overthrow the government. Then you got the main character, Jim, his wife, their friends and family members, as they're basically fighting back against these militia groups and trying to prevent them from taking over the United States. This was a decent read. This book definitely has some things I like with it. Like, for one, this book has a lot of action, a lot of shootouts, lots of big guns, and there was a lot of moments where the action went over the top, and I really enjoyed that. Definitely a lot better than the previous novel I read of a kind of a similar thing, Knight of Power. So this book has action. There's some good characters that I really like, and there's definitely some really good action set pieces within this novel. However, there were some things I didn't like with this book. For one, it is a rough read. There's several scenes where there's characters discussing their political views, along with racial views, and what their thoughts on other groups of people, which can be rough to read through. As there's a couple of times where I'm reading through it, and it's just starting to get rough. It's like, okay, let's just move on, get the story going. And there's some other things I didn't like, but overall, this was a decent read. I'll definitely be checking out more books by this author. Alright, on to the book review. Plot. Across the United States, several acts of murder, robbery, and drive-by shootings are occurring at an alarming rate. Such incidents include a brutal murder at a porn store where 3 men exit out of a stolen station wagon and shoot the store owner and 2 employees at gunpoint, with the 4th man leaving a message outside of the brick wall, "Set thy house in order." A child predator is released from prison and later murders a boy. Despite being arrested, he is released from a lack of evidence, but is later tracked down by a large mob and beaten to death. And in a small north-central Missouri town, a group of thrill-seekers drive their car at night, blasting heavy metal music while opening fire with their automatic rifles at anything they pass by, shooting house windows, cars, and even wounding several people. James Edward Kincaid, or Jim, a ex-Vietnam vet living in New York with his furious wife, Janet, who works in a federal building. After doing 2 tours in Nam, Jim hasn't fired a gun in 25 years and hasn't spoken to his brother or sister, and his father died a few years after his mother passed away from cancer. His wife asks if he would like to go for a walk with her at Central Park, but Jim warns her it's dangerous, but she informs him that she's got 2 pistols in her purse. He accepts but later regrets it as they are followed by 5 men in the park. However, the thugs back off when an officer appears telling them the park is closed and they should leave. Jim, annoyed at his wife for bringing them into danger, but she ensures that he or she would have done something if those thugs attacked them. The next day, Jim's best friend, Bob Waldman, is asking him if he's watched the news lately, but told him he hasn't. Bob is concerned a civil war is about to break out with the rise of militia groups, along with people forming vigilante movements, with the rise of crime and police doing very little about it. Bob is also worried of being killed as one of his best friends, Marty Limber in St. Louis, was murdered in his home as it was believed to be a hate crime, as Marty was Jewish and several more Jewish people were murdered within the United States and Canada. Bob tells Jim he's already bought 2 pistols and a shotgun, along with taking shooting classes to defend himself. He gives Jim a copy of a VHS tape recording the news story and warns him he should do the same when this civil war breaks out. After viewing the tape, Janet is worried about being caught in the crossfire of violence and rising crime. Jim owns his parents' house that's in upstate New York and wishes to get away from the city for a while. Taking his Ford F-50, they reach the house as it's buried deep within the thick forest. Another friend of his, Phil LeBron, is fixing up the place as the 2 talk a bit before Phil leaves. Unknown to both of them, Phil is secretly part of the religious militia group, Sword of the Righteous, and strongly believes that Jim is working for the feds. He and his members plan to murder the couple and hide their bodies in the forest. While repairing the house, Janet happens to see LeBron spying on them during a thunderstorm, and earlier that day found a few empty shell cases, making her and Jim suspicious. Jim reveals a hidden army within the house built by his father. Over the course of several days, more robberies, murders, and even riots breaking out is causing further tension with law enforcement and the citizens, with Jim brushing it off as people losing their minds. However, his wife Janet is very concerned and warns him that she has been going over several files of U.S. government planning to order a state of emergency, along with reports of members of the president's staff clashing with each other. Jim doesn't believe a civil war will break out, which leads to an argument between the two. However, the next day, when speaking with Bob, he confirms Janet's fears, and Jim begins to believe a war is going to happen. As the crime and death toll is rising, President Arthur Evans orders National Guard along with heavily armed military forces to begin patrolling each state and to only act if fired upon to ensure law and order is restored. While many members agree with this, however, one staff member, Fred Porter, is outraged with the slow actions of the president, blaming him for not taking this matter seriously, which leads to a heated argument causing Fred to leave the office, then goes on live TV revealing several dirty secrets of the president and his staff, causing further fallout within the government. Within 8 days, all hell breaks loose when militia groups begin attacking law enforcement and government buildings, starting in both North and South Dakota. Jim watches in horror as a bloody shootout happens on live TV with several people caught in the crossfire and killed. It isn't long until other states begin reporting southern wars happening. Janet wants Jim's friends and family to quickly flee the country as she fears their lives are in danger since they worked for the government. Jim contacts his friend Don, who just bought a shotgun and is planning on joining him along with his wife. As both Jim and Janet are packing up their things in their New York apartment, a sudden explosion from a rocket launcher shatters their windows as they quickly flee to a friend's apartment. After watching the news with more wars breaking out, followed by states being taken over, with the president refusing to surrender to the militia group as they threaten to cause further attacks if their demands weren't agreed, Jim contacts Don, who is trying to find his son after storming out of the house when it's revealed to be part of an Islamic group. Both Jim and Janet wait for him, but when the line goes dead, Janet orders Jim to pack his things, take his truck with guns, and get out of New York before it's too late. Wearing her military uniform allows Jim and Janet to bypass most of the roadblocks and later rejoin Dawn, his wife, daughter, and son as they nearly encounter trouble from a group of racist fascists while driving. As the two drive further down the empty road with militia groups taking over news and radio stations and spreading propaganda, once they reach the house in upstate New York, watching the TV, they see Manhattan being cut off from New York with all the bridges blown up and tunnels flooded as both U.S. soldiers and militia members clash with each other, killing many citizens in the crossfire. Suddenly, Rebron and Dr. Barnier and members of the Southern Righteous appear and demand Don and his family come with them as they're black. Jim and Don stand their ground. However, Don's son nearly causes a shootout when he tries to hold his father at gunpoint, but Jim is able to disarm him. Rebron threatens to kill them off if they don't leave at once. After a heated argument between Don and his son, Jim's had enough of being pushed around and gets his guns ready. However, it isn't long till Rebron's men return and open fire on the house. Jim quickly grabs his AR-18 with a scope and goes after the men, killing 2 of them. He holds 4 at gunpoint, demanding they drop their weapons and raise their hands. One man refuses. After insulting Jim, he replies by shooting him and forces the other 3 men to the house as they are disarmed, then ordered to leave. As more friends and family come to Jim's house, he learns a few locals who aren't interested in following this militia group plans to have them join his side and wage war against Sword of the Righteous. As Jim and the others begin fighting back, his combat skills return and becomes a deadly soldier he was back in Nam. As Rebron is losing this war, he is taking desperate measures to ensure he'll win this civil war at any cost, along with allowing other militia and neo-Nazi groups to double their numbers. But to Jim's luck, he is aided by Vice President Fred Porter to ensure their country isn't taken over by the enemies of this state. However, as Jim and his members are getting closer to hunting down the core members of the militia groups, he'll have to watch his back as there are traitors everywhere, even within his own army. Breakdown was a decent action war novel, While it's highly detailed in locations, characters, and weapons, however, I felt some scenes don't go into the gruesome detail, as Johnstone will describe a scene, but it's up to the reader to visualize how it happened. And other times he'll put in the gory details in a few scenes. There were many moments of action, big shootouts, violent warfare that I enjoyed. However, towards the end, there was too much talking, along with political and other subjects that I wish Johnstone cut out and just focused more on the action. There were characters I liked and others I really despised, especially the racist bigots of the militia groups and their evil leaders. I was so glad to see them got what was coming to them. Like the other characters, part of Jim's private army, however, was annoyed with his ex-wife who wouldn't shut up and complained about pointless things. Luckily, she's only in a small part of the novel, so glad the author cut her out later. While at the start of the novel, Jim was an alright character, but I felt he was being too chilled and laid back when the crime and violence begins increasing and he keeps brushing off everyone who tells him a civil war is going to happen. When it does happen, he finally realizes he needs to take action now. Later on, Jim becomes a better character and was impressed how smart and deadly his wife Janet was. Despite the scenes I enjoyed with some dark humor within the mix, however, there were scenes I didn't like, as there was a lot of political, racial, and other drama that I didn't like, and too much talking which dragged on the story just as the action was getting better. Would have liked it if Johnstone cut these scenes out and focused more on the warfare that's happening within North America and even Canada, and made some scenes not so rough to read as well. The ending I didn't like, as it leaves you on a cliffhanger, and felt Johnstone could have just wrapped up the ending than what he wrote instead. If you like reading action novels about civil wars with lots of shootouts, big guns, and over-top action, then maybe you'll like Breakdown. However, it has a lot of rough scenes of racial views of other groups of people that some might find offensive, so if this doesn't sound like something you want to read, I'd say pass on it, but if you're more interested in action and violence, then you might like Breakdown. Alright, that's for the review today. Hope you enjoyed. Yeah, this was a decent read. This is actually the first William W. Johnstone book I actually completed reading. I tried some of this guy's books in the past, and I didn't get far in them. This guy, he wrote in a lot of genres like action, thriller, war, crime, slasher, western. I'm not sure about science fiction or fantasy, but William W. Johnstone wrote in a lot of genres, and I discovered this novel on a Facebook action group, and a person said this has nothing to do with the Kurt Russell film of the same name. I really enjoyed the scenes of the warfare with resistance fighters taking on these militia group members as they're causing havoc and destruction across the nation. There's a lot of big shootouts with a lot of big guns and stuff, so that I really enjoyed. There was some dark humor in the mix, and I like that too. And there's definitely a lot of really good action set pieces I really enjoyed. One scene involving a plane, which I really like that as well. And there's a lot of scenes where it shows news footage of just this civil war that is just destroying everything, and you're seeing all the destruction action happening, and the characters are also taking part in this as well. So that I liked. Unlike as the other novel I said, Night of Power, which you didn't get to see anything. We're told from other characters what's happening, and that's it. This Breakdown, it shows you what you want to see. So that I liked. The characters were good. I do like the main character Jim. As I said at the start, he's an alright character. He's kind of brushing everything off, and then it isn't until later on when he begins taking everything seriously, and then is pushed to his breaking point. And I'm glad to see this character. He doesn't waste time when he has to fight someone. He knows how to kill them, and Susie begins getting back into his combat. He is a really deadly character, so I really enjoyed the main character. His wife was another interesting character. She's a very brave and fearless, and she puts up one hell of a fight too, along with the other people that join Jim's private army as well. I definitely like the locations the book takes place in, as you go to a lot of parts in the States, and it even shows some parts in Canada, which I really like that too. As I said, the detail on locations is good, characters, weapons, and stuff. However, as I said, I felt Johnstone didn't put more detail when he should. In the opening scene where he's describing the increasing crime rate, he's just describing what's happening, and I wish he would go into more detail with some of the scenes. For example, the part where it's the porn store massacre. He describes what happened, and you have to visualize how violent this shooting was. And I wish he went further with it, like having the author describe, like, the blood splatter on the floor, the desk, and even like a shelf of movies and stuff. That would have been better. And there was even another part where Jim takes part in this ambush against the militia group, Sword of the Righteous, and the author just describes what Jim and his members do, but he doesn't go into the detail of like how the shootout went, and as the characters are eluding the dead bodies, you have to visualize how gruesome the scene is. So that's the only thing that bugged me with some parts. I wish he went more detail into these scenes. As later on, he'll go further with the detail and like the news footage and stuff, but I wish he went more with it during this like other parts of the story. So yeah. And there were some characters I didn't like, especially the militia group. I really hate the leaders of these fascist, racist bigots. I absolutely hate these leaders. I'm glad they got what's coming to them in the end of the book. As I really hate these characters, and I think the author did that deliberately to make you hate them and just to be happy once Jim and the U.S. Army put these bastards down. So I think the author went a little further with making these evil militia characters to make the reader want them to die, essentially. The one thing I will say I felt in the book, I really was as I said, there's like several parts where where just the action gets going. The author then cuts away to like a drama scene, and there's a lot of talking, and I really didn't like that. I wish the author didn't do that. As you're taking me out of the action, I want to see the action, not drama or hearing the thoughts of some evil militia character. I want to hear. I want to see the action that's happening, not drama. So that was that happens quite a lot in the book, and it got kind of a little annoying at times. I was just like, come on, stop cutting away from the action. I want to see what's happening. Stop with this drama nonsense. Oh yeah, and some of the characters' choices, I was questioning their actions, like why didn't you take action now, or why you're waiting, like so there was some like parts where I'm questioning characters' actions, and it's like, why are they not taking action now? And it isn't until later on it's like, okay, we're gonna take action now. It's like, you should have done that sooner. Especially with the military not acting till like towards the end of the book. It's like they should have stepped in immediately. Like when the war breaks out, they first they do, but then they're told to stand down, and the militia group members are just taking over a state. They're taking over each state they evade. So I was like, why are they not acting? They should be like fighting back and stuff. So yeah, so there was a couple of scenes of where I was like questioning some of the characters' actions and stuff. The other thing I didn't like this book is that it does get rough in parts to read. Like having to read the racial and racist views of some of these like evil characters, I felt was a little like exaggerated, a little too much. I wish Johnstone cut back on it. Like okay, I get the general idea that these militia members, they're very racist and evil, and their views are absolutely are twisted. However, he just keeps going on and on with some scenes with the characters expressing their views and stuff, and it just got a little annoying at times. But luckily, it's not like Knight of Power, where the author just kept focusing more and more on that than the action. So there are some things that do balance out well better than others in the book. And lastly, the ending. Like the ending isn't like a shitty ending, but it just left me like, really, you're gonna end this book on a cliffhanger. I don't want to give too much away, but basically, after Jim, his private army, and the vice president and the army come victorious against the militia members, it's a year later, and another civil war starts all over again, and it's like, really, you're gonna end the book right here. I just wish the author just wrapped up the story and just finished it instead of ending on a cliffhanger. That's the only thing. But other than that, it was a decent read. Alright, that's it for the video today. Hope you enjoyed it, and please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to October Library, the YouTube channel, where I post book reviews, book hauls, and other fiction-related content. Until then, I'll catch you later.